Welcome to Mind Your Being. When we think about living a healthy life, we often focus on the things that we can measure: our exercise, our nutrition, our sleep. But one of the strongest predictors of our long-term health and happiness is something much less tangible: the quality of our relationships. And when we're in a long-term relationship, life doesn't stand still. Careers can become demanding. Maybe we have children, health changes happen, parents get older. Life can get really busy. And before we know it, so much of our energy is spent simply keeping life moving. It's easy to find ourselves operating more like teammates managing a household than partners nurturing a meaningful connection. And that's exactly what we're exploring in today's episode. I'm joined by registered counsellor and psychotherapist Margie Mitchell for a thoughtful and hopeful conversation about what helps relationships stay strong over time. Together, we explore what healthy communication really looks like beyond the buzzwords, why emotional intimacy can quietly fade during busy seasons of life, how menopause and other midlife transitions can influence our relationships, and the simple daily habits that can help couples stay connected or gently reconnect when life has pulled them in different directions. What I particularly loved about this conversation is that it's not about having the perfect relationship. Whether you've been with your partner for 2 years or 40 years, I think you'll find plenty of practical wisdom and reassurance in Margie's insights. Throughout the conversation, you'll hear how passionate Margie is about helping people, and you can hear that she brings a really warm and compassionate energy to the conversation. I really enjoyed talking with Margie, and I really hope you'll enjoy our conversation too. Let's get into it. I've been really looking forward to this. Thank you. You really put me at ease. I'm usually so anxious and nervous about this, but I know we had such a nice conversation, so thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
Welcome to Mind Your Being, Margie. Thank you for making the time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off by asking you to share a little bit about your background and how you came to be a therapist.
Cass, I did, back in 2008, I did a counselling degree. At the time, I didn't actually have the capacity to get into the industry, but I knew it was something that I loved and that I wanted to get into. And then in 2019, I went back and did a graduate diploma in relationship counselling. And I just loved it. Relationships have always been something that I've been fascinated with. So I did that degree, and I was fortunate enough to get a job counselling with couples and families. In 2022, I am a continual learner. So I went online, I did another year of developmental model training, came from the States, and then I did another grad dip in trauma-informed process work, 2023, 2024. And 2023, I got together with some colleagues and we opened up a practice in McMahon's Point, and I've been there since.
Wow, congratulations on opening your own practice. That's very exciting.
Thank you, yeah.
So I've asked you on today to talk about how couples can try and maintain connection, particularly with a midlife focus, or how they can rebuild connection when things start to go a little astray. I thought we might start off when we think about healthy relationships. Communication is often mentioned. Can you tell us, what does healthy communication look like in everyday life?
Yeah, it's a really lovely question. Yeah, I like it. And everybody, it's interesting when clients come in, they do as you say they want to help with their communication. And it's such a broad thing to come in with. And it's also interesting people's interpretation of healthy communication, because what people have grown up with in their families is what they might think as healthy or unhealthy, but that's their norm. And the people that have grown up with maybe less healthy experiences in childhood know that it's not healthy, but also haven't been taught what is healthy. So it's really important to get an understanding from the client, particularly on how they grew up and what they interpret healthy as being. For us, in the way that we look at relationships, healthy is very much around considering the other person. It's about kindness. It's about leaning in and leaning towards your partner. It's being able to sit and hear your partner's concerns without getting defensive, without shutting down, and they're not things that we're necessarily taught. So, people come in at even that sense of they feel like they're speaking well to their partner, and then they don't realize there's a bit of a harsh tone in it that the partner hears. So even small things like that, bringing that to light for some couples is actually really helpful. So healthy relationships is also about how couples repair from a disagreement. So it's quite a broad kind of thing,
Yeah.
but it's also allowing autonomy in the relationship as well as a partnership in the relationship, if that makes sense. Allowing individuals to have their own separate interests, friends, family, obviously, and also having the relationship as the focus as well and the other person as the focus.
It is so broad. So thank you. That's a great answer. On that, really, we only know what we know when we're growing up, don't we? And often, I think people can still get to midlife and may not have had a reason to, or the chance to, or have chosen to unpack their personal stuff from childhood. And like you said, they might not even realize they're not communicating in a kind way or a polite way, or yeah, there's so much to it.
And it's funny because people will come in and say, "Oh, I've had a normal upbringing," and
What's normal?
yes, because that's the thing. There's no normal.
No.
Everyone has had different experiences for whatever reasons, and their normal might be different to their partner's normal as well, and that's the difficulty.
There's probably a fair chance it is different to their partner's normal because we tend to attract different people. Like on that too, it really depends what's been modeled to you. I mean, some people, like I grew up for a long time with a single mum. So my early childhood years didn't really see a relationship being modeled to me. Other people might grow up with not so healthy parental communications, or they might see, a secure model where they repair after conflict. But that is the benefit of being able to seek counselling with someone such as yourself to help identify these things and then get the tools and the strategies to help repair.
And I think also what's interesting that comes out in the room sometimes is, when you're with someone, their past, you talk about it when you're meeting them, and you talk about family and you get to know them and you understand that their past is different to your past and that their upbringing is different to your upbringing. But it's not until they come in the room and it gets a little bit more unpacked. So there's often moments where the other partner says, "Oh, okay, now I get why that actually is a real trigger for you, or there's a sensitivity there for you. I understood it, I guess, cognitively, but I didn't understand it emotionally and what that was like." So to bring that out in the room is so helpful in the relationship.
I can see how that would be helpful. I mean, trigger points and sensitivities, like you said, I think therapy helps you to have that perspective, taking the perspective of your partner, and to, like, maybe it's the first time in therapy that it really lands for you, like you said, emotionally. Oh, I can see why that's triggering my partner, or they feel like this when, like, instead of just taking our own perspective, like, why are they getting sensitive about that? So I think that would be really helpful. I imagine that would be quite emotional at times in therapy.
Yeah. It's quite profound and incredibly impactful when when someone experiences, when I talked about, I cognitively know, oh, I know this about my partner. I've known this about my partner. This isn't anything new that I've heard, right? I know this about my partner. But when you unpack it and they get a felt sense of it from their partner, not just a cognitive, yes, my partner's saying this to me, I've heard the words, I know they've had a terrible upbringing, for example. I know all this about my partner, but being able to dig into what that was like for their partner in a way that helps create that emotional empathy for them, because they've got the cognitive empathy of, oh, yes, I know this about my partner. I know it was hard for them. But being able to open up that emotional empathy in that space is quite profound in the relationship.
Is that often a turning point in therapy where you see a little shift or I don't know, a little bit more closeness or, like you said, empathy towards the partner?
Yeah, it definitely can be a turning point. People often say, wow, I've heard this before, but I've not heard it in this way. I know this about my partner, but it's like they've got a felt sense of it now. I know this cognitively about my partner, but I've now got a real felt sense about it with them. And I think that helps shift things in the relationship.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
You often wish these things would happen earlier in a relationship, but I guess sometimes it takes a little, it's only
Encouragement.
sometimes when issues come up or trouble communicating comes up that we get to the heart of things. It's just life, I guess.
Yeah, so true.
And as you know, I recently did another podcast with another counsellor where we talked quite a bit about navigating conflict in relationships and repair, as you mentioned before. But today I wanted to focus more on how to maintain connection, because that can end up causing trouble if connections kind of fade away over time. But often for people, it's not a particular conflict that might bring them to therapy. It might be a loss of emotional intimacy or a feeling like, I feel like we're drifting apart. I guess to start off with, how would you explain emotional intimacy and how might people recognise when that's starting to fade in a relationship?
Yeah, it's a lovely question, Cass. I think you're right, people don't notice it. Or if they do, their life is too busy to do anything about it, depending on what age they're at and where they're at in their relationship. So I think when people lose connection with their partner, when they lose a sense of being able to communicate what's going on for them in a way that their partner can hear it, it becomes quite difficult. But it can sneak up on us because, we've got lives, we're busy with careers, with families, with kids. That sandwich generation, we might have older parents looking after older parents as well as younger kids. And so sometimes we're not even aware of it. It just drifts. The emotional connection gets lost because of our busy everyday lives. And all of a sudden we wake up in the morning and go, wow, I actually haven't had a conversation with my partner that, has any meaning. I'd feel completely disconnected from them.
So when people come to you and they recognise that they've kind of not having a strong emotional connection for whatever reason, like you said, it's a very busy time of life. Unfortunately, often relationships can be at the bottom of our priority list. It's not ideal, but sometimes that just happens when very busy, juggling a lot of things. But what's some of the advice, or how do you help people begin to rebuild that connection or maintain that connection over time?
Yeah, it's a lovely question because people don't realise that they have, and they keep putting it off. Generally, they might keep putting off connecting with the other person because life's so busy, and then all of a sudden they've lost it. And then it becomes difficult to get it back because they've lost their confidence because their partner's not giving it. Like, it generally, it might be both of them that have lost connection, but they don't quite know how to connect again. So coming to counselling is they're connecting already. right? They're already connecting when they book an appointment. And for them to be able to know that they're already on that journey, I think is important. It gives them a whole lot of reassurance because they're already there. The relationship, when they book appointments, that tells me the relationship's important to them. So in the beginning, we often talk about the small things that they can do and that they can notice. The small, how do they show their appreciation? And just notice when the other person is showing appreciation and how we appreciate each other, because it's not uncommon that couples come in and they feel underappreciated, or my partner doesn't notice anything, this kind of thing. And what people don't realize is their partner's either not sharing what they notice verbally or physically showing them that they appreciate things. Because we lose in the busy lives that we have with kids, older parents, all that kind of stuff. We lose the ability to be able to see the small things that our partner is doing. Their husband might pick up the kids from school. Now people will say, well, that's their job. Well, yes, it is. And they're doing it. And so noticing those small things, because you know what, it saves you from doing it that particular day, because you might have a meeting or you might have something else going on. You might be looking after the parents. So I think noticing those small things is really important, and appreciating them out loud, not just, hey, thanks for picking up the kids, but I'm so grateful because that gave me the time to go and look after my parents or take them to an appointment or have the meeting at work that was really stressful today. So that just really took the pressure off me. So being able to actually voice not only, hey, thanks for doing it, but also what it meant to you to have your partner do that for you. Because I think we're very quick to, not even acknowledge it or just a quick thanks.
Yeah.
So making it meaningful, I think it's important in terms of small acknowledgements.
I think that's a good point. I think sometimes people might think it has to be a grand gesture or something, but as you're saying, those daily micro connections can really go along, even if you only did it once a day or something like.
I had a couple that they decided that they wanted to do that more. And so they gave each other, I think it was 5 minutes every evening to talk about 3 things they appreciated about each other. And they made it this ritual, and it was beautiful. It could have been a most seemingly benign thing like hanging out in the washing or feeding the kids, but it made them stop and think about everything that they each do for each other. And that became a ritual of connection every evening. It was beautiful.
That is beautiful, and that doesn't take a lot of time, and then it's that thing, like what you focus on or what you pay attention to is what you notice more, and that's going to affect how you feel if you're focusing on that, even if it's only for a short time each day, that gratitude and that appreciation, rather than focusing on what they're not doing or.
What we
Yeah.
focus on grows, right? And so that's it. It's absolutely, as you say, Cass, it's what we're focusing on that then gets a spotlight. And then that creates a sense of appreciation within the relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As we said, midlife can be just so busy and full on. And then for women, inevitably comes a time of perimenopause and menopause. How do you see that impacting couples that come to see you?
Yeah, it's an interesting time of life. And for both partners, I see husbands that feel disconnected from their partner. They want to get close, but depending on how the menopause, perimenopause, or menopause is affecting this is just talking about heterosexual couples here. It's the husband wants to continue getting close. And I'm not talking about necessarily sex, but I'm just talking about the closeness of cuddles, holding hands, things like that. And the wife or the partner going through perimenopause or menopause might not want to have anything to do with that. They're also finding a new sense of hey, I feel like I've got my own autonomy here and I want to go and, you know, look after me now because I've been doing all the caring for everybody else for so long. This feels like it's my time. So but they don't talk about it. And I think that's probably where people get unstuck is, one person's feeling rejected and the other person is feeling this sense of, oh, I don't have to look after the kids anymore. There's probably still an element of caring for the kids, but not as big. And then there's also, having to look after elderly parents or maybe not having to look after them anymore. And so there's a combination of things going on, this sense of freedom as well as this sense of I actually, my whole body's doing things that I'm not really knowing much about. I mean, we are over time learning more about menopause. So there's a whole lot of things going on, and often the other person is feeling very much like this is a personal thing.
Yeah, I think, as you said, in heterosexual couples, a lot of times you'll hear some men will say they feel, like you said, rejected, or like the partner is not attracted to them anymore. And then from the woman's point of view, it may not be that at all. It might be she's not sleeping, she's having hot flushes and other symptoms. So how do you help couples navigate that? Does it help most people when either side has an understanding from the other person's perspective, or are there other ways that you help people?
It's a really good question because the couples we see, and this, might not be the majority of people, but the couples that we see are often not talking about it. So they're not saying, the woman's not saying, hey, I'm struggling with menopause. I want to be close to you, but I don't. I do and I don't. The husband, again, we're talking about a heterosexual couple here. The husband is saying, hey, I'm feeling distant, I'm feeling rejected. They're not saying those things, right? So they're not communicating what's going on with them. So being able to open up a space for communication for each of them to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling with what I'm going through. It's different to what you're going through. How do we work through this together as a team? And do you know what I mean? They're the kind of couples that come in that haven't been able to speak about it at all and feel a sense of rejection, frustration, all of those big feelings that they feel about it, but haven't been able to speak about it.
Yeah, I imagine that would be a massive relief to start off with, to sort of get that perspective and that understanding. So after people have that understanding, what are some other ways that you help people?
I think probably the only other important thing I would say about that is that people may feel like we're broken, we can't get through this because they're not talking about it. And so it's more about helping them be able to communicate about these difficult topics that are difficult for them, because if it wasn't difficult for them, they would have already spoken about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to be able to help them talk about it in a way that they can understand each other and where each other's coming from, because both are in pain, and be able to have a conversation that is safe and doesn't create a sense, because what tends to happen is people have tried to come and have the conversation themselves outside of the therapy room and it hasn't gone well. And so they just kind of put it in a box. We just don't talk about this, you know. So so just being able to have the conversation and being able to have permission to have the conversation in a safe space where they can share how they're feeling whilst the other person's being held, so that they can hear what their partner's feeling without hearing it as a criticism, so then they become defensive. So teaching them those tools about how they can sit with these difficult conversations and how to have them, I think is the most helpful thing
Yeah.
around that kind of period in couples' lives, because there's a lot going on in that period. There's not only menopause, there's talks of retirement, what that's going to look like. The kids are maybe leaving home or maybe not leaving home so much anymore, like we thought they all would. So there's a lot of changes going on. It's not just menopause at that particular time in life.
Yeah. Children are staying home a lot more due to financial reasons. Do you see couples where that impacts? Or
Absolutely. People have these dreams of what their future might look like. I mean, it's not, they adore their kids. It's not about that. But that, what we've been brought up, or what couples of that age have been brought up to believe, is that, they do their job as parents, and not that our job's ever finished. But the kids are going to leave home, they're going to form their new relationships or whatever. And all of a sudden the kids aren't doing that because financially they can't afford it. And so there's this conundrum between, we want to support our kids and we have to mourn the loss of this dream we had, that maybe we might have, our lives might look differently at this point in time, and now they don't. We had this dream that they might, but now they don't.
yeah. So another major transition later in midlife can often be that empty nest situation where, maybe the adult children are moving out. Often because we've been so busy, this might be a time where people go, oh, who are we now as a couple, or what do I want for the rest of my life, kind of thing. Is this something you see couples come to therapy for? And how do you help couples navigate this transition so that they become closer than further apart?
Yeah, it's a lovely question, Cass. No, it's a really good question. And yes, we do see it. It does come into the room. It's such an interesting time because it comes with excitement and, also fear around, what does this look like? Are we going to be able to, if the kids have left home, it's just us. What what do we do with this? So it is a really tough time for couples that, they might have a certain level of, we imagine what it's going to be like. We have dreams of the future. We have dreams of what our life is going to look like without the kids at home. And then all of a sudden it's here and we maybe not have prepared for it. Or maybe it's not turned out the way we had imagined. Like, we might have thought, hey, we're both going to retire. And then all of a sudden, actually, either for financial reasons or we really enjoy our work, we've kept working. Maybe it looks like we always had this dream of going traveling, but actually we can't afford to anymore. And it might also be one partner thought they wanted something, but coming into this stage of life, they've figured out, actually, maybe I want something else. And I think I'm going to be quite generalizing here, but for women going through menopause, there's something I listened to it the other day that was interesting. Our capacity to, our caring capacity, I'm going to call it, kind of lowers a little bit through menopause. We don't have as much capacity. And so, when our partner is used to us being caring for the kids, caring for them, and all that caring, kind of, we've still got it in us, but we just don't have the capacity sometimes to give it what we used to be able to give it. So that can also be quite different for the couple to experience. It doesn't mean we don't care about the family as much or anything like that. We just don't have the capacity anymore. So that can create shifts. All of a sudden, my partner's a little bit different and we don't necessarily talk about it. So we make things up in our head if we don't talk about it, or they must not care, or, that kind of thing. And we can stumble over ourselves in that sense of, I'm getting in my own way because I'm thinking my partner doesn't care, when actually they do care. They just don't have the capacity to care in the way that they did. So it's about being able to speak about the difficulties and the challenges in a way that depersonalizes it, which is very difficult to do because this is such a personal thing, right? In a relationship, you're my person and you're different. And it can be both ways. It's not just about menopause. Men in there, when they're coming to retirement, some men plan really well and they have all these ideas and they talk about it and they're able to transition. And then some men don't really think about it at all. It'll be right. That's kind of future focused. And the partner's really worried because, hey, my partner hasn't even spoken about this. What is this going to look like? I'm scared we're going to trip over each other in the house. You know, we're going to be we're going to be falling over each other. We're going to be watching each other's moves, and I'm not sure how I'm going to handle it. So it's really important to bring up what our hopes and dreams were, that maybe retirement or that moving into that stage of life is actually looking a bit different to what we'd hoped and dreamt. And how do we then navigate what each of us does want? Because it might have changed. And what would that look like coming together? How can we work towards a common or common plural things that will make this relationship work going forward? And sometimes couples can't. And that's okay too, because maybe, you know what, this might be the end of, might be a pivotal time for them that maybe they do want to go their separate ways. How do we navigate that as well?
Trying to navigate that situation with as least conflict as possible, I think would be helpful.
And keeping in mind that even if they're at that point where they want to go their separate ways, they will always be connected. If they have kids, number one, they will always be connected. So how do we do it in a way that can create maybe a friendship so that they can stay connected in a healthy way, especially around kids? And, that's also tricky. There's a lot that comes into that as well. And also the couples, sorry, one thing that's just come to mind is also the couples that do want to split up but financially can't. So make the decision to stay together financially because they have to.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. How do they then stay under the same roof and
Suggestions for people, because I know some people in that situation and it's real, like financially, a lot of the time it's the woman because they've, not all the time, but a lot of the time they're less financially independent because they've taken time out often to care for children. Their superannuation takes a hit in that time. But yeah, I mean, it's clear here talking to you that communication really is the foundation. Like having the conversation to start off with is the foundation for moving forward. But yeah, how do you help people navigate that if they decide we're not working together as a couple, we don't want to be together anymore. However, we can't afford to live separately. What happens? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. The people that come to us generally want to know how to do it well. And I would say when people have the awareness to be able to say, okay, this is a big thing in our lives, we need to get some help with it, then they're the ones that doesn't always work out this way. But, they have a willingness to try and make it work. So it's all about talking about, okay, what are the boundaries going to look like? How are you going to communicate? What is, we bring up all sorts of scenarios that they might not have thought about, right? How is it going to, and generally there might still be kids at home this day and age, even though they're adult kids. How are we going to talk about with the kids? What's it going to look like? What are the rules going to be around, who's in the kitchen, depending on how, like the little intricacies, we have to dive deep because people might say, well, everything will be fine. We're friends, we'll work it out. But then someone might see the other person jumping in a car with someone that they don't know. And then there's that huge amount of hurt or worry, disappointment, whatever it might be that they're feeling around that. And they're not prepared for those feelings. And so they don't know how to respond to those feelings. So it's about working through, okay, how are we going to talk about this? We need to anticipate different scenarios and how we're going to work through that. So there's a lot of conversations that have to be had that are really important. And, when a couple's willing to do the work around that, it can work out. It just depends on the strength of their relationship, their friendship, how much work they're willing to do with a lot of things. Yeah.
So many scenarios, isn't there? And like you were saying, for those couples who get to that point in life and they do decide to separate, move out independently, I think it's important, like you were saying, to realize that if they do have children, you're going to likely have perhaps weddings, birthday celebrations, and then if your children have children, common celebrations for the family. So working out how best to navigate them for your children's sake, not just for yourselves. It can be quite tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be really tricky and hard for people to often, if it's early stages, it's very hard for people to shift out of that sense of pain. They're in so much pain. And so it's really hard for them to even think beyond that pain because they're so desperate and it's so hard. But the ultimate is to be able to, in situations like that, be able to have both parties be together with the kids, and because of all those life changes that are happening and things going on in life. It doesn't always happen at all. And, depending on what the situation is and how they came to their situation, it's very dependent on that. I mean, the ideal would be to remain friends, but reality is it's not always like that. Reality is there's a lot of conflict and there's a lot of hurt, a lot of wounds that people are trying to get through, which is really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, initially at the start, there would be a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, perhaps a lot of resentment. So I think it's just acknowledging that those things are going to take time before those feelings lessen. They may not go away, but it's going to
And
take time.
if they're not processed as well, they take even longer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
If you could only answer with a handful of words, what would your answer be if I asked you, what do the couples who stay connected over time tend to do differently?
Handful of words. I would say playfulness, humor, intention, intention on the relationship, be very intentional. I want to say effort. While people say relationships shouldn't be a lot of effort, they are. But if you start making that effort early on, it doesn't feel like effort in the future. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense. Thank you. I was going to say, I think in the early stages of relationship, most people would say it doesn't really, for most people, take a lot of effort. But I think in reality, over time, if you're going to sustain a long-term relationship, even the closest, healthiest communicators, I think you need to be intentional because it's, if you have a full life, it's really easy to get caught up on autopilot or just,
So
as we
true.
talked about before, your relationship often will fall to the bottom of your priority list. So 100%, I think that's very normal and great advice for people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've talked today a lot about heterosexual couples, and I'm mindful of being inclusive. Like, they're not the only couples I'm guessing that you see. I was wondering, for people in the LGBTIQA communities, are you seeing any differences in the issues that we've talked about today when they come to see you?
Not necessarily differences. I think they deal with the same kind of difficulties communicating. They have the same differences in their family of origin, how they've been brought up, that kind of thing. So that is generally the same. The thing that is trickier depending on where they're at in their own self and their journey, depending on how that's been processed and how that shows up in the relationship is something important to consider and to be aware of. So, for example, I might have a gay couple where one of the partners has come out at a young age and they had a great experience coming out and a whole lot of support, and then the other one had the opposite experience. We need to be mindful of how that shows up in the relationship. So it's more around our awareness of what is life actually like for them and what adversity have they come up against and how can we be empathetic to that? Because some of the sensitivities that show up in the relationship can possibly be from things that have happened in childhood, just like in a heterosexual relationship, right? But it's just from that lens of, their lens as opposed to the heterosexual relationship lens. So it's just about shifting our lens and being very mindful of that. And yeah.
Being mindful of the different lenses and taking the perspective of the other person. I think it's understanding too, isn't it, that people have a different experience. So as you said, I think earlier in the conversation, when you care about your partner and you want to have a healthy relationship, it's taking that time to try and really understand their perspective and show some kindness and empathy towards them. But also some acceptance that just because we feel a certain way, we shouldn't expect our partner to feel a certain way, which is often quite difficult, but I think it's something to try and spend time on.
We often assume that because our experience is we experience something in a certain way, our partner must experience it the same as us. And they don't. They're different, right?
I think I'm guilty of that sometimes too, yeah.
I think we all are because we're human. And it's just about bringing that into the room and being able to have a conversation about it and bringing that into our awareness in a deeper way that helps connect the couple rather than disconnect the couple.
And also be mindful of different cultural traditions and cultural upbringings, and it's going to have an impact on the people in the relationship and then the relationship itself, I imagine. So trying to understand those as well.
Expectation of the different cultures, the expectations and broader family expectations, different traditions, all sorts of things comes into that, those intercultural relationships. There's a whole other dynamic there and a whole other learning and understanding to be done, which is so fascinating. It really is.
It is fascinating. So from our conversation so far today, I can see that communication is definitely the base of a healthy relationship. That willingness, I think, to try and understand your partner's perspective. What other recommendations from you as a counsellor would you like to give the listeners today?
Thank you. I love that word willingness that you use because it is a people need to have a willingness to want to work in the relationship. And so I talked about the kindness and appreciation piece. Some other things that I talk about with my couples that is sometimes helpful. They're all experiments. So everyone needs to figure out what's most helpful for them. Allowing a couple of minutes each morning before they leave for work or their day, whatever they're doing, to just discover something interesting that their partner might be doing that day. Just so they've got an idea in their head of what's coming up for that person that day, just asking the question, just 2 minutes. I know mornings are crazy, and it can sometimes feel a lot, but some couples get in. Rituals are really important too. if couples can create rituals that is just for the two of them, whether it's walking in the door at the end of the day, giving each other a 6-second kiss and a hug, something as simple as that, or before they go to bed, have 3 things that they appreciate about the other person that day, those kind of things. I also, things that are a little bit, I'm going to call them old-fashioned, but writing notes,
That's
like
cute.
sticky notes that you can leave on someone's windscreen, your partner's windscreen of their car, or, if they go to the bathroom after you, on the mirror, just, hey, I love you because you're you, or, something that is sweet and a little bit different. In the fridge, some people leave notes in the fridge on their partner's lunchbox if
That's
they
so
take their
cute.
lunch,
Yeah.
those kind of things. We also have the ability to be able to connect with our partners at any time of day with phones. So even a text message during the day, how's your day going? Been thinking of you. Just little things like that. Saying these all together, it sounds like a lot. I'm not saying doing everything. And, you know, couples create, I was talking about rituals, couples create intentional moments of maybe once a week they have a conversation about how are we going and how are we feeling. Not just we've got this on this week, this on, we've got to take the kids here, I've got to take the kids there. I'm making dinner Monday night, you're doing it Tuesday night. Those are kind of everyday conversations, but the actual, hey, how are you feeling within yourself conversations? What big things, are there any stresses at work? Are there any stresses in your day that you're struggling with? Having those kind of conversations on a regular basis help to get an understanding of your partner's world and what's actually going on with them right now in the moment. And approaching problems, I had a client who said, and these are not verbatim these words, but they talked about the way that they approached their problems was us versus the problem, not the problem between us.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're tackling a problem, it's the problem versus them, not them in the problem type thing. And just having your partner's back no matter what. And when I say no matter what, sometimes we come home from work and we might have had a horrible day and someone's been a bit horrible in the office. And some people can respond in a way of, oh, yeah, but that person might not have had a good day. And so you don't feel like your partner's got your back when they're kind of trying to actually empathize with the other person. They're probably trying to do it. It's not done because they don't want to support you, but it's just maybe turn it back to validating that person's experience. Gosh, sounds like you had a really hard day. Do you want to tell me some more about that? So that the person feels like you've got their back no matter what.
Being thoughtful about your response, I guess, and like you said, just that small validation for your partner.
Mm.
They're great suggestions. I love that you use the word intentional because, like we were saying before, we can just get on autopilot when we're all so busy. But I think, like you said, describing just small moments of connection throughout a day, even if it's 2 minutes before work, leaving the love notes, that's quite cute. That all helps sustain that communication, doesn't it? Like just little bids for connection, because I think at the end of the day, we all just want to feel seen and heard, especially by our partner. Yeah, they're beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Given the work you do supporting others, what helps you stay grounded and look after your own well-being?
Oh, it's so important. Such a good question. So important. I am regularly at the gym and I do Pilates. They're my big important things that I give back to myself. My time with my friends and family is very important to me. So making sure that I have that time where I can just be with them is important. And also just being in nature. If I can stand in nature, if I can either be in the water in the ocean or be in the bush somewhere, if I can do that regularly and just it's kind of like a bit of a grounding thing for me. then that helps me as well. So making sure that I get my own fitness in, making sure I have time with my friends and family, and getting out into nature, putting my feet on the ground in nature or in the surf that's not necessarily on the ground. But yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
those. The nature is so therapeutic, isn't it? Just
Mm.
the sight, the sounds, the smells. Yeah, I love the ocean too. It's
Yeah.
so therapeutic. It's so calming but uplifting at the same
Mm.
time, I find.
Mm. Yeah,
And
Cass, that's a beautiful way to describe it. Yeah.
it gives you energy, but it's so calming listening to those
Mm.
waves, even if they're roaring. And as you described, social connection is known to be so important for everyone,
Mm.
for our well-being. So it's great that you make time
Absolutely.
for that.
Yeah,
It's good.
absolutely.
Where can listeners find more about you or your work?
Yeah, thank you, Cass. So our practice is at McMillan's Point, what we're called the Good Relationship Practice, where I work. We have 6 therapists there. We have a token male therapist, which is amazing, as
Mhm.
well as female therapists. And so you can find us at www.goodrelationship.com.au. There's a tab when you look at therapists. If you want to contact me directly on the website, there's a tab to send me an email directly, or you can have a look at all the profiles. We have profiles of all the therapists there. And if you look at a profile and see that there's someone that you think you might feel is a good fit, you can send them an email, and we organise 15-minute call consults before we bring clients in, just so we can get a sense of whether we're all going to be a good fit. And we go from there.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today, Margie.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, Cass. It's been a privilege.
Well, thank you. Your advice, I can hear the compassion in your voice, and I can hear how passionate you are about helping people. And I think you've given us some great things to think about today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mind Your Being podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please follow the show wherever you get your podcasts and share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. If you have a moment, please leave a quick review. It really helps others discover the podcast. Thanks again for being here. Take care, and until next time, mind your being.